My name is Alyssa Mendoza, and my mental health diagnosis is BPD, which stands for borderline personality disorder, and OCD. It's a very misunderstood diagnosis. However, in a very short version of explaining it would just be emotional dysregulation disorder. So you have a fear of abandonment, worthlessness. You have very intense but unstable relationships, impulsive activities and behavior, whether that be self destructive things or emotional impulsivity, so not being able to control your rage. At least that's been my problem. Um, Borderline personality disorder is kind of like you live in a black and white world. There is no gray, and that the gray is what you're trying to figure out. So when you know somebody or meet somebody and they have a good side to them and they have a bad side to them, a person who doesn't suffer with borderline personality disorder sees them as a whole. So they have multiple things about them that makes them them. But when you have borderline personality disorder, you see them almost as like two different people. They're good to you when they're good to you, and when they've hurt you intentionally, unintentionally, most of the time unintentionally, you feel threatened, you feel attacked, insecure, and there is no, oh, this person can be good and can be bad. It's you're just bad, you know? And you go from idolizing people, which is putting them on this pedestal, and when they hurt you, you almost bring them back down to where they're absolutely nothing. And deep inside, you kind of know that it's wrong because slowly you lose friends, spouses, family, and it's this feeling in you that is only focused on the negative. You know, as much as you want to see them as this like whole pizza, you just see them as like individual slices. Meanwhile, they usually see you as, oh, well, you're really emotional and you still have this and that, but you're still a good person, you know? And you tend to want to push people away and kind of be disposable of them when you feel hurt. And for a while, when you don't understand your mental illness, like you don't know what's wrong, and you think it's normal, and by the time you know it, like you're alone. When you hear OCD, you think, I'm a neat freak, or I'm constantly cleaning, or I don't like my hair on my face, I have to move it, or my necklace is like, to a degree, maybe that is, but on surface level, OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder, um, involving compulsions and rituals that are involuntary. So the same way a person with OCD, where they are constantly flicking a light and they have to do it 10 times to feel okay, I have emotional compulsions in my head. So, for example, I experienced having health OCD my whole life. As a little kid, I thought I was a hypochondriac, and I couldn't even, a headache, I was dying. A bump on my wrist, I had a tumor. And maybe we all are on WebMD at some point, but I was on it like all the time. And I was having these hysterical breakdowns, crying. My mom was like, there's a movie, Madagascar, and there's a giraffe. And in the movie, he's a hypochondriac, and the giraffes have spots. And there's a part in the movie where he notices like another spot, and he's like freaking out, and he like creates his own cemetery. But he just has another spot. So my mom used to call me Melman growing up, and it was kind of like a joke. And I just thought, oh well, I just have health anxiety, and nothing could relieve me of the health anxiety other than going to the doctor. So I was like religiously at the doctor, trying, because I knew I wasn't okay, but actually I was okay. Over the years, which I didn't know, OCD is actually themed towards your morals and things you really, really care about. So I experienced having OCD in relationships where just out of the blue, my brain would, whether I cared about this person so much, I would go into a rabbit hole of trying to figure out, were they really good for me? Do I really like them? Just having these compulsions all day that would take me away from the present moment of actually being with this person. You actually tend to get avoidant because you don't want to deal with the anxiety and the compulsions. I would say that you end up feeling resentment and turmoil because you have somebody who has no idea what's going on, and for you to tell somebody, I'm constantly doubtful of you, to them it's just like a heartbreaker because they don't understand that it's like you don't even want to, and at some point, at least for me, I would just run after a while because, questioning your good judgment, whether this is even real or not, and, the compulsions were horrible. I mean, sometimes it would just be like an involuntary thought that would be so negative about your partner. I'm not saying it, but I'm thinking it's the fact that I'm thinking it broke me, because normally, I'm kind of like always in love with my partners, and it was over the years that I realized I was changing. My brain was changing how I felt towards some of the people that I really had feelings for. And what I learned with OCD is that when we're in the wrong relationships, it kind of makes us thrive more. So that obsessive feeling and that like intensity of, obsessiveness with your partner, like it kind of makes you feel like this is the right relationship and I am okay. But most of the time you're not. And when you get into a healthy relationship and it's peaceful and calm, you're like looking for that chaos. So then that starts making you question, like, am I even here? Am I even the right one? You know? And I would say as an adult within my last 2 relationships, I suffer with this. And, it's been a road for me that I'm still conquering. And like I said, OCD is themed. So you can have health anxiety, you can have POCD, which is pedophilia OCD, which is you thinking you're a pedophile and you're not. Because what I learned as well is that a real person that is harmful to people don't go and get help for it, or don't ask, don't acknowledge it. They just do it because it's normal to them. So people that have these fears and go to a therapist for help, or on Reddit or on Google questioning, the fact that you're questioning should show you right there that that's not you. But no matter what, until you get specific help in these treatments, your brain is on a constant loop and will try and feed you everything that it wants you to believe. And OCD, I could say, is like living in a hell, because you're constantly on edge and everywhere you go. There's OCD about racism. Maybe you really believe that you're racist and you're not. And you go into these compulsions and you avoid certain races and cultures, and just so you don't get anxiety. Not that you don't want to be a part of that, or you don't want, most of the time these people don't even have a real fear of anything. But it's like your brain is a sponge, and it latches onto things that could make you question your morals. For instance, some people, even watching murder movies and horror movies, people with OCD could think, oh, well, can I do that? And that's going to put them in the spiral where every time they see a knife, they're going to question, do I want to grab it? Like, do I want to do something? No, they really don't want to do anything. But then you have a person who doesn't struggle with OCD and they're watching Saw and they're completely fine. Well, when I was about 11 years old, I started experiencing some mental health issues that nobody understood, not even myself. My family was struggling with my behavior, and they would take me to a regular doctor, and they just tried to tell them that I was a kid and I was going through mood swings. But my parents believed that it wasn't normal because I was very manic and impulsive. I was very rageful. I also did suffer from physical abuse and emotional abuse, which probably led me to this point, as well as school bullying. I would say that there was a certain point in my life where I was very courageous, very bold. I wasn't scared of the world. The world should have been scared of me, and not in a bad way, but I was determined that I could do anything. I had this mentality where anything I guess a boy could do, I could do. I was on a football team. I was always the only girl on these sports teams. Like, it did not matter. I had this drive that the impossible was possible. And, I was really into art. I was really musically talented. I could really put my mind to anything that I wanted to do. And, I held on to this like self-expression of myself from a very young age. I have really short hair. And when I was in kindergarten, my mom took me to go get like a little trim, and I had like long hair at the time. And I saw like a picture on the board of like spiky hair, and I just told my mom like, well, I want that. And, she didn't go against me. She just looked at me for a second and said, really? And then I said, yeah. And she let me do it. So I cut it all off, and I went into kindergarten, and I was the only little girl with short spiky hair. And I even put a little bow in it so that people would still know that I was a girl. And I would say that I got looked upon in a bad way from a lot of parents because, you know, my parents allowed me to express myself the way I wanted. I was kind of like a little punker as a kid. I always wore little spike belts, skinny jeans, um, really gothic clothes. I was me, and I would say I got steered off a lot. And as a kid, I realized that I didn't get looked at the same compared to everybody. But I kept going. And along with me, I guess, being authentically me, it created a lot of bullying because to the eye, I just looked like a boy. And I identify now as a part of the LGBTQ, but even during grade school and elementary, like, I had no idea. I just knew that I liked my hair short and I liked not dressing in dresses, you know? And so as I got a little older, I was very, well known in school. I had a lot of friends. I was kind of cool with everybody. I stuck true to myself, and you know, I like I said, I had a lot of friends up until I think, there was a time when I came out of the closet and I did not get the reactions that I thought I deserved. Nonetheless, I didn't even know I would get a negative reaction. I was just so like, you know, I wasn't aware that people viewed that in a negative light. I remember when I got a girlfriend, I was like in like the 7th grade, and I told my mom that same day, like, I had no fear. Like, I didn't think, oh my god, mom's gonna hate me. Like, I was a little scared to tell her, but I wanted to tell her immediately, and it didn't occur to me that anybody would have a problem with it. I just wanted to come out. So I told her, and she was like, okay, like, and I was like, whoa. And at the time, I didn't even realize how grateful I am for being accepted like that, because my parents never made it an issue. It was kind of just like if I told them, oh, like something casual, it was like, oh, okay, as long as you're not doing anything wrong. Very quickly, I didn't have to go through that until it was more of like a social thing. So upon coming out, I honestly did lose a lot of friends, and it sucked because it was like, I was just trying to find myself. And during that time, I guess that was when I started spiraling down with my mental health. And, there was a point in my life where, I was struggling at home. I was in a very toxic environment, and, I guess from the ages of like 11 to even a teen, I was indulging in alcohol. And I remember I was like in 6th or 7th grade the first time I got really drunk. And, I kept on with those risky behaviors. I was smoking weed at a young age. I mean, I was doing primarily between those two things, or just like walking the streets late at night. And like, I had no fear. Maybe I should have had that fear because it's unsafe, but I didn't. And I realized now that I was really acting out because I needed help, and maybe I felt like I wasn't getting it, and I was constantly being bullied at home and bullying at school, and then coming home and it not being good either, and I was just out of control. I mean, any little thing would set me off. I would try and jump out of a car, like I would run away, scaring the people around me for my own safety and theirs. And it got to a point in middle school where one night I was at home, and there was a lot of arguing going on, and I was spiraling out, and I went into the garage and I was pacing back and forth, and I knew, like, this is not okay and this is not normal, and I don't know what I'm about to do next. So I grabbed the house phone and I called the cops and I said, I need help. Like, can you guys come help me, please? And so they came to my house and they talked to me and they talked to my mom, and they mentioned that maybe I should go stay at a college hospital, which at the time people were very quick to be like, oh my god, a freaking mental hospital, a psych ward. It was very like looked down upon, which hurt me because I got labeled as being crazy once people had found out that I was staying in a facility like that. And so I went for a couple weeks, and it was an experience. I have not been back. And usually people with borderline personality disorder, bipolar, usually they do end up going back to mental hospitals more than once. But for me, I haven't been. And there are times in my life where I sometimes get so scared and vulnerable of my mental health that maybe I do want to go back for a week or a couple weeks because I want to feel relatable. Um, I don't really have many people that relate to mental health or maybe aren't aware that they struggle with mental health. So I tend to feel like crazy that I'm just by myself having my OCD, my BPD, and you know, you can probably agree that I'm sad, but I don't think anybody really was aware how miserable I was, or even still am at this point. Well, over the years, I had to be in therapy as a kid, and I hated it. I hated having to go to an office. I hated having to be on medication. At some point, I didn't want to be on medication because I wanted to smoke weed, and I thought that was more of a priority than anything. And so there was a point where I made them get me off of all my meds, and I didn't want to go to therapy anymore. I thought I was too cool. And I think I was like 16 when I made that like decision for myself. And over the years, my mental health got worse. And like I said, there's a quote about a dog who there's a nail, and the dog is laying on the nail, and he's whimpering, and he's not getting up, but he's whimpering and he's crying. And people are walking by the dog, and they're assuming he's fine because he hasn't got up yet. And the only time people are going to react is when he gets up and he's bleeding. And relating that to mental health is like when you're depressed and in pain, you get comfortable, I think unconsciously, in the pain that, yes, it really hurts, but it doesn't hurt enough for you to leave or to get up and do something. And for me, I think hurting some of the people that I really cared about the most put me back in this journey because I desire stable relationships. I desire a relationship with myself. I desire a relationship with my family that I have that I have resentment and turmoil over. I desire to have true friends, not just good company. I want to be involved with people that, understand me the way that I understand them. And like I said, I met somebody that meant a lot to me that I realized I was kind of bringing them down in the process. And luckily, they're very patient. But it was the fact that, having a friendship, relationship with them allowed me to see myself in another perspective. There's some people who will unconsciously teach you what you deserve in love, but then there's some people who would teach you through your own eyes how to love yourself. And I think that was the case. It was like no matter what, they just never gave up. And it was like whether it was gonna be with this person or not, like I had the same patterns in every relationship with BPD. It's kind of wild when you're in relationships in BPD because, like I said, you fear abandonment and motives that everybody has when sometimes they really don't have, and you might be a little bit of, stalkerish or impulsiveness. And does that mean you're necessarily those things? No, but we crave security. And no matter how many times you're going to tell us, we won't believe it until we believe it about ourselves. And I don't know how many relationships I've been in where they're constantly giving me reassurance, telling me they love me, this and that. And they always feel like it's not good enough, and it breaks my heart because deep inside, like, you are enough, but I'm not enough for myself, and I'm not going to believe it. It's just the way you tell somebody who is insecure about their looks and that they're beautiful and that they're, vibrant, and they don't accept it. And do they want to? Probably, but they don't believe it about themselves. So it's kind of just like a passing, response. And some people, they don't deserve for all their affection and efforts to just be thrown away. But it's not really getting thrown away. It's just that maybe we don't think we deserve it, and the instability, like I said, in relationships, friendships, whatever it is, it's like you idolize and you devalue really quickly, and there's no middle ground. I could, project all my insecurities and emotions to whoever, and most of the time, even though I take accountability, and if they really do know you, they see through you and they understand you're not a monster, you're not a bad person, like you're struggling. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and real people will acknowledge that. And I guess all you do is feel guilt and shame because mostly everyone is willing to see through you, but it's hard for you to see through them. And I think there are some situations where you feel like, well, I've put up with other people that have emotionally abused me more than the people that don't. And you think, well, I must not be in the right place because, I don't feel the need to fix them or heal them or go after them or put up with their crap. But it's like at some point, you probably like the abuse. I have always said, and people joke around that, I like the chase and I like, being abused, and there's memes and this and that, and it's funny, but do I really like it, or does my heart really like it? Absolutely not. I have found most of my answers and coping through self development. I mean, I was not much of a reader. I sometimes feel like I can't even watch a movie because I don't have the patience to, and I never thought about picking up a book. However, um, one day I was looking in my closet and I had a rack of books that are not touched, and I found one and I read it, and I'm like, holy crap, like the money was in my house. Like what I needed to find was in my own house. So I picked up this book, and it put me on this like rabbit hole of books, and I'm constantly at Barnes and Nobles getting these self-development books because in life they teach you the basics, math, English, this and that, but nobody teaches you how to deal with the heartbreak. Nobody teaches you how to cope with the emotional stress. These are all things that you figure out on your own, and most of the time we figure out in self-destructive ways: alcohol, drugs, sex, things that make us feel good in the moment, but do they really? No. you know I would say books, if you don't have the help, like financially or insurance wise, books would be your best bet. um, Even on Google, if you have issues with dealing with your emotions and you don't know how to process them, I look up these worksheets that are called emotional dysregulation worksheets, and they basically break down your emotions, and you can journal is a big one. um, Sometimes we are desperate to talk to our friends, and there are some people that kind of make you feel like you know they're not really there when you need, but you're there when they need, and they may not understand you 100%, and that's not a reason to give up, because along your path you will find the right type of people that will hear you out. If you feel like you really have nobody, I always say music is your friend. And if that isn't enough either, there are online free chat supports, free numbers you can call. And like I said, it takes motivation and courage to get to that point. But if you just really do it once, it'll become easier. It's just like cleaning your room. When you're depressed and you're in a bad state, you're okay with having piles of mess and clothes and mountains in your room. And, when somebody walks in, they're like, what the? And to you, it's like, it's fine. Like, and you're comfortable in the mess. That's the analogy. And when you get in the habit of cleaning that and decluttering it, you walk into a space now that's like, I could breathe. And it's really true. The way, you keep your space is pretty much the way your mind is. And it gets hard. I still have my moments where I am in my dark nights, and this morning, last night, and it feels like I'm still doing all this work and I'm not where I want to be. But when I think about it, I was in a much worse position like 5-10 years ago. So I really have gotten somewhere. I believe in everybody, and all you really need to do is believe in yourself. And for me, what's helped me that I really want to share with others is that you need to give yourself a hug. You will look everywhere for a hug and compassion and people saying the right things to help you, but nothing feels more fulfilling than when you could tell yourself. Leave little notes on your front of your door, your affirmations, smudge your room, say things. What you speak is your reality. And if you keep speaking negatively, like, you're setting yourself up to be in that way. And if it feels fake, you eventually keep doing it, you believe it, just like everything else, you know? I believe that the most healing power is the mind.